again to the Journey 2020. We're pleased that you could take this time to let us into your life, into this hour of your hopefully relaxing after a busy week. Now, you'll notice that I'm a little more dressed, as in about 3 layers of clothes, than I ordinarily am. And I want to tell you, we're still in Florida, okay? Charles is a longer term Floridian, but I took the weather report very seriously, and so I have my little fleece on. So those of you who are up north and who will say, well, y'all ain't seen nothing yet, understand that for us in Florida, this is a little bit of a surprise. So again, good evening, and I want to turn it over to my incomparable host, Charles Morris, who is going to introduce us to the show tonight.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, welcome to the Journey 2020. Charles Morris, happy to be here. It's funny that Dr. Robinson is talking about the weather, and I was born and raised in Florida, and he was born and raised up north, and you see the difference.
No. Born in Jamaica,
well, I meant he was
raised up north.
Right, he was raised up in New York City, and he knows what cold weather is, and it's just funny. And by the way, the temperatures was in the 70s today, so we've gotten a break, and the country is going through this.
I have to do, like in church, it started out in the 40s, okay, just so that we can put it in context.
Okay. But as you know, the country, especially the Northeast, is really being hit hard right now. And we here in the South, we're blessed because, like I said, I think it's supposed to be in the 80s this coming weekend. So we got the good side of it. So, but
now Charles, you're going to have some folks calling us up and blessing us out, talking
well,
about
I get that all the time because I have a friend that's up in Flint, Michigan, and she swears to me that I'm lying.
Okay.
And I just say, well, just go on the internet and see, because I give her the weather report because I see when it's cold up there, and I send her, like I said, Mary, it's like 78, 80 degrees here, and it's about 22 there, and you just lying. You just well, check it out. So I get that a lot.
Okay.
But tonight's show, I spent a lot of time up at Carter Tabernacle CME Church, and had a chance to meet someone who we kind of connected spiritually because we share the same passion. So every time we get together, we start talking, and we end up just talking about the same thing, and we feel the same as Dr. Robinson, and a lot of people, I guess like us, just feel that for whatever reason we do what we do. And that is that we try to bring awareness, and we try to find ways to combat some of the issues that we face every day, especially with our youth. And there's so much now, especially in the year 2014. As you know, on this show, we talk about so many different things, but more importantly, we talked about just last week or the week before, I was telling you about, Haki and the meeting, and I had a meeting with him today. They're going to do another 10 weeks. So I told him that I was going to invite you. Okay. And part of the meeting is that we talked about how we have failed, and we are failing this generation. So we need to step up, and that's one of the things that we always talk about when we meet. And I'm going to have her introduce herself. But I was telling Dr. Robinson that she spoke at my event this year. And when I read her bio, and the minute she told me that she was a track person anyway, because anytime somebody tells me they're a track person, I don't care who it is, I get much respect. Because what people don't know is we're crazy about sports. We love our football, we love our basketball, and we love baseball, hockey, blah, blah. But if you do sports, if you know anything about sports at all, track practice is the hardest practice out of all of the sports. I don't care what nobody say.
Amen.
Football is physical and da-da-da-da, but track practice, you have to have a heart to, if you're going to run that, back then we call it the 440, if you're going to run that 400, if you're going to run that 880, that's a man's race. Or you're going to run the mile and all. That's that takes heart. So when I hear somebody that runs a 400, or 800, or a mile, anything like that, I just like, wow, because it takes a lot.
It takes a lot.
So I'm gonna stop it here, and I'm gonna give it back to you, and then you can take it from there, and I'm gonna let her introduce herself.
Well, Charles, since you started out, with such an introduction, firstly, one of the things when I said I came into the studio here, that I really feel that I'm in the midst of track royalty, and I might have embarrassed her a little bit, so pardon me for putting you on like that, but I am in that same kind of admiration. So, if you will, just tell us a little bit of, now see, I got to put Charles on blast because, we really should have had your bio, we really should have. So,
and now one of the other things that I forgot to say is that she know what coal is because she's from the Windy City. Okay, so she definitely know what coal is, being from the Windy City, And then part of what I do remember about the bio was the fact that she used to race the boys in the neighborhood. So you know how embarrassing that can be when the girl is outrunning you. So at a young age, I guess that's when she found out, like, well, if I can beat the boys, I must be pretty good.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
Well, I am so glad to be here. I'm Rosalind Dunlap Gentry. And yes, that's how I started out. Was that's when kids played in the neighborhood. And we would go outside and we would play. And we would play. And we would play games. And some of the games we would play, we would run against each other. We would have races in the street. And often I found myself, beating the boys. And yes, that is when I said, well, I probably can run pretty good.
Okay.
So, but just to give you a little bit of my bio, yes, I grew up in Chicago.
Okay.
I was born, though, in St. Louis, so however you cut that's cold.
Oh, yes.
But I have lived on both coasts. I've lived in California now. I call this the coast, too. Live now here in Orlando, but have been assistant athletic director for universities where I either did director of compliance or senior women's administrator, where we did all the eligibility for the athletes. So at one point, I probably had like 900 athletes and 16 sports that I was in control of. But now, today we're here, and really here in Orlando, I do have a radio program too, Believe to Achieve. It's on WOKB 1680.
That's a great name.
And I often talk about motivation, but I just, every time Charles and I get together, I don't care. It's just like we look and we go, and the next thing we got something heavy. And we're talking about what can we do? How can we do it? What needs to be done to help our children have more awareness, to help parents understand more their role. Because I do believe parents have somewhat abdicated their role as parents in this. And I do believe we have failed our children. When I hear people say things like, children are so bad now. I always want to say, but we've been their role model. We've been their example.
Right.
And if they are bad, that's what we've showed them because they didn't come here that way. So, just so much is going on. I mean, this is 2014 and you're looking at the amount of things that are going on in the media with our young people. And we do have a lot of great things going on with our kids. And somehow we're going to have to fight to get those good and great things out where we have young, people who are playing chess and doing well and, great violinists. But somehow we've allowed the other to overshadow the good things that are going on.
Yeah. Just as a side note, I had the privilege of being at City Hall and to watch a team of youngsters from Carver Middle School. And by the way, for our audience, that's a school that's in the hood here in Orlando. But these kids were getting an award from the city's mayor for their science and technology projects. And from this little school in the middle, of the hood, they reached national prominence in terms of the project. So as you were just saying, that we often don't pay enough attention to those positives that are there among us.
Yeah, because we do have you know, unfortunately we allow bad news to always take center stage, but we really need to begin to and I think fight for good news to get out, because we have many of our youth that are involved in the STEM project, you know, science, technology, engineering, and math. And they're doing quite well, but we're not talking about them. We're not putting them out there. And a lot of that has to do with, we have ourselves just started following media, what's most popular. So we are allowing the media to dictate what we are even interested in.
Okay, that's a good, excellent point. What are some of the things that you're seeing now with our young people in terms of how they're getting influenced by media or by some of the environment around them?
Well, you know, one of the things, and we've talked about it, Charles and I often, and just with even my other colleagues, just the lack of awareness, the lack of consciousness or connection to their future, in terms of who I am today, what I'm doing today, where I am today will have a great effect on where I will be tomorrow. Okay. And what I will be able to do tomorrow. And I believe somehow we have disconnected the today, you know, with tomorrow. It's almost like they're believing that, you know, they've looked at the videos for so long that all of a sudden, you know, women are going to jump out, you know, places, and they're going to have the Rolls Royce is going to pull up, and money's going to fall from the sky, and everything's going to be well,
right?
You know, and they're going to dance the night away,
right?
So somehow we've allowed things that are not reality to take hold of our children's mind, and so the realities that what they need to be prepared for, to work hard in school, which my mom, my parents stressed, are now taking a back seat. There are people that don't send their kids to school even. They'll say, well, they don't want to go to school today. Where we didn't have a choice about where I want to go to school. Exactly. If my mom was leaving, I was too. If my dad was leaving the house, I was leaving too. Exactly. I didn't have a choice to just stay at home and hang out. So I think we have a lot more looseness, but we just have a lack of awareness. I call it connecting the dots. Parents look at their children and they say, my little boy, and they say my little girl, but that's also a woman and that's also a man from the moment they are born. That man and that woman is there, and they're forming, and I don't think people connect what they're doing today with the little boy, with the man and or woman that person will become.
That's really on point, because I think that we see so many men, you know, who are still acting, and with all due respect, my brothers, who are still acting as like little boys. Yeah. You know, so we have that development, you know, still to do. But I wanted to get back as you know, you talked about being from Chicago, and we hear all kind of things. One of the things people often think about now of Chicago is the murder rate.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And even in talking about St. Louis,
very high there as well.
Exactly.
With Ferguson.
Right.
With the Ferguson situation right there in St. Louis.
And I know that times have changed, but how did you manage to negotiate through the all of the pushes and pulls that were there in Chicago or in St. Louis, and become the person that you are today?
You know what I tell people, and I really mean this truthfully, is that, you know, one, I had to be willing to throw a punch. I'm real serious on that. Okay. It was not a place that you could be timid and make it through the day. Just to go to school, you had to walk through lots of things just to get to school. And so I had a mother. I was with my mom and dad, but I had a mother who told me, "Don't be afraid to don't let anybody take the first punch. If I even think they're getting ready to throw a punch, I need to throw one first."
Okay.
So I had a lot of fights growing up. I know people can find it hard to believe because I'm such a, I've been an attorney and people like, but yeah, I mean, it's a tough place, and that's why when I hear people say how tough things are now, it was extremely. Think about the '60s, Martin Luther King, the '70s. It was extremely tough growing up in Chicago. But I had two loving parents. But again, my mom didn't look at me and just see a little girl. My mom looked at me and saw the woman that I could become, and that is what she raised. She didn't raise me to be a little girl. See, we have to tell people you're not raising a little boy. Because people will often say that. Well, I'm raising my little boy. I'm raising my son.
Right.
But at some point, that person is going to be an adult.
I don't mean to break up, but it's funny that you say that because we get into this discussion about the mothers raising their sons, and I always ask them at that point. I said, now you see how your son is, right? And you're raising him. I said, now you're raising him, but is he someone you want to marry based on the fact that she has spoiled him? The fact that he's acting like
no job.
Right.
Not working.
Right.
No chores.
Right.
Just come in the house.
Right. And so
she takes out the trash.
Right. And then the majority of the time they go no. And you just look at them and like, really? But you raised him. And the majority of the time, they'll say no.
Right.
And
that's that disconnection. Even when you think about it, I until recently. I mean, I'm recently married, but I was with my sons, but with my sons, I understood that they had to have chores because again, I understood they were going to be men, and I understood they were going to be leaders in their communities and in their home, and so I did not allow them to just. I'm working, and My son talks about this now, my 28-year-old. He says, Mom, I remember when I was cutting lawns. Now, mind you, he didn't just cut our lawn. I bought him a lawnmower at 9 so he could go cut other people's lawns.
Okay.
And people were like saying, well, he's too little to do that. And I said, well, when do you start a man becoming a man? And my son, he was talking about recently how people say, you're such a man. And he'll say, yeah, because my mom. But I talked to him about being a man when he was 3 because I understood he was going to be a man. We have to realize as women that we are not raising boys, that we're raising a father to somebody, unless they're going to put their Peter away, excuse me. More than likely, they may become a father, right, or they're going to be a husband, and we need to understand that and not just raise boys to be boys, so they're sitting around playing video games and things of that nature now.
No, it's funny that the workshop that we did with you and Pastor Jenkins and Vince, and it was really based on mothers raising sons. I tried to make it open, but it was really targeting, without saying it, single mothers raising sons. You should have been on that panel.
Well, and I've actually spoken on this around the country.
And see, the funny thing is, because Dr. Robinson, what you don't know is there's some people in that workshop that I still talk to. Okay. And there's just something that they just don't get. Because I've had discussions over and over again about that workshop and the same topics that you sit there and you try to convey about that. And again, I always say this, and I kind of get in trouble when that workshop started with my pastor because he works in the prison system. And he made a statement. Of course, he had to explain it because his statement was, I've seen so many young men come in this prison system because of their mothers. And then, what are you talking about? But what he's saying, what you're saying, and that he even said, again, he said they come in, they're arrested, they're about to be incarcerated, and they need to fill out the paperwork. They can't even fill out the paperwork. They 18, 19, 20 years old, and they give it to the mom. Here, mom, fill this out. You know, because they've been so catered to, and they have this expectation that is not real. And
So what type of husband would that person make?
right,
What type of father would that person make? And so my sisters need to begin to check themselves because I and my children will tell you this. I did not want to raise a problem for another woman to take care of. To have.
Okay.
I literally thought about my sons are going to be someone's husband, someone's boyfriend, someone's father. I did not want to see them being someone's problem, and my future daughter-in-law coming to me saying, you know, God, you didn't do anything. You know, you did nothing. You know, and now they have problems in their marriage because my son, instead of teaching them how to have chores, what he feels catered to, so you're supposed to do everything. I don't, because we have men now, they don't take out trash. When I was growing up, my dad had 3 jobs. And most of the men I knew in our community, you know, despite what we say now that, you know, everybody seems to think that you can't be an African American and have 3 jobs ever because, oh, you must be from the island. But I grew up, my mom had 2 jobs. My dad had 3 jobs. My dad was the super of our building. He worked in the factory and he drove a truck. My dad worked 14-hour days, 7 days a week. For the most of the life I could remember. He always worked. And when I think about it, he always provided for his family. When we needed something, refrigerator, shoes, my mother would go to my dad and say, we need these. And my dad would say, okay, well, let me, you know, how much is it? We now have men looking to women and saying, you know, you got your half of the rent this month? You got your half of the groceries? I never saw something like that growing up. I never saw my dad do anything like that, say anything of that nature to my mom. You got your part of the gas? I'll never forget once we were driving, my mother and I were in Chicago, and I noticed she needed some gas. I said, well, Mom, you know, you need some gas. Why don't we stop and get gas? And she said, why would I do that? I said, well, you're kind of running out.
Right.
She said, oh no, when I get home, your dad, he'll look at the gas tank and he'll get some gas in. Now, I had forgotten because when my dad bought my first car at 16, I didn't put gas in my car. That's what he did for me. Whenever I got in my car was cleaned because my dad went and had it cleaned, and it was full of gas. Because that's how he understood, for him, that was being a man.
Okay.
And to me, he's like, you shouldn't, in fact, he told me I shouldn't even try to learn how to, you know, to change a tire, even though I thought that was a little bit, I said that I need to learn to change a tire.
Right, exactly.
He told me, you know, but my point was, today, we now think this is 50-50, but it's crazy. And it's really killing our families because boys need to see what a male's role is, and women need to see what their role is, because we are not supposed to be single mothers raising our children by ourselves.
See, you know, again, another show in a show.
Right, exactly.
Well, I mean,
Exactly.
we talk about it all the time
Yeah.
because we start talking about something.
Yeah.
And I've seen it and I've been part of it. And I've talked about it over the years. And I've seen and know of mothers or women who are been thrown into that independent role. And I call it survival mode. And then when it comes to understanding how to step back, they don't know how to. So now you're stepping into a territory in which you're actually kind of a threat, not because of my manhood, but because you don't know when to step or when to turn it off. So now, by who I am naturally and what God gave me naturally, I'm confused because you're being you and not even knowing that you're kind of making this not so balanced in the way that it should be, because you looking at me like I'm crazy and I'm looking at you like you crazy, because now you don't know, and I'm not saying it as a fault.
Right, but you don't know where the line is.
Right, because you're in survival mode. This is what you know.
Yeah.
And because now you don't understand what I am naturally. Now it's like there's this imbalance of like, well, this is just the way God created me. And now there's a problem, not even knowing there's a problem, because you just being you and you just doing what you need to do to survive, that you've been doing all of your life because of what you've been taught.
And that's the key right there, because I'll never forget my mom, bless her, but both my parents are deceased. But my mother, I don't remember her having to pay for anything but her fur bill. She had a, I know people can say, who is this person? But my mother she had credit cards.
Okay.
I think she paid her card note, I think. But my dad paid everything. That was what he did. And I'll never forget, as I grew up, my mother told me, which I thought was absolutely crazy. She said, well, now you need to be independent. And I remember looking at her thinking,
That's funny, right?
well, that doesn't make sense.
Right.
I mean, Dad pays everything for you. Why wouldn't I want to find a dad?
Right. I hear you.
But, so what did she do? She pushed me so hard that other way. And I never understood that. And so most people say, oh, well, you need to survive and blah, blah, blah. And I go, yeah, but even to my mother's end, my dad was taking care of her. And I thought, and he did well. They did well. And I thought, whoa, how have we allowed this to be so skewed and so imbalanced? Because think about it, anytime we are imbalanced, that means we're in a way in chaos. And we're bringing our children up in that. So now we have, nobody knows what they're to do. And so boys don't know what they're to do.
Right.
And they going to remain boys, so they stay with the video games and playing with their 3-year-old. They playing more video games than the little kids. The women are trying to relive their childhood. And so, wearing and doing things that they don't, that they shouldn't be doing as a mature woman with children. So we have so much going on. And again, it comes back still to knowing who we are, where we are, what we are, and what we're trying to get to. What is that future that we're looking at? Because if you ask most people, they cannot tell you where they're going. They cannot really tell you what it is they want to become. All they can say is, well, I want to have enough money, but nothing really where we're talking where the real specifics and how they're going to get there. Because again, if I am a parent and I have not connected what it is I'm trying to do, how can I do that for my children?
Exactly.
And that's men as well as women.
I think the hardest thing to convey and the hardest thing to learn for me, especially coming from where I came from, now that I'm old enough to understand things and to see life in a different, I have a different perspective. I now understand, so to have an idea but not a plan is almost insane.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, I have an idea, but I don't have a plan.
No plan.
And if you don't have a plan, the idea is that's all it is. But to convey that and to get to understand that, because as a child, I didn't understand that. And of course, it was told to me. But now that I'm older and looking at life, and as time passed by, and I'm like you have to have a plan. You have to be able to execute, and then now you better understand the foundation, of understanding what it is to have a foundation. And I can remember being upset because somebody took my job for no reason. But then, as upset as I was, when my job was taken, a job that I loved dearly, I thought about it because I was mad for a while. But then when I realized that while I had the job, that if I had better prepared myself and even had taken advantage of the opportunities that job had given me, nobody could have ever taken anything from me. Period. Because basically, if the job would have been taken from me, all that meant was that I just needed to hit the road and just kept going. But I was stuck in the sense of my mindset because whether I got too comfortable or whether or not I didn't realize the true blessing or whether or not I just didn't expand, and because I didn't. But now I realize that this man who did what he did, he didn't do anything as what I did to myself.
And that and therein lies the awareness, because what and the consciousness, to consciously live and understand. I'm gonna say I've always been goal oriented. I mean, I ran track and field. I always was goal oriented. I was valedictorian in 6th grade. I was co-valedictorian in 8th grade. I always knew what I wanted to do and always planned to do it. I have my JD, my MBA, my undergraduate. I'm now working now, as you know, in the area of exercise. I'm a certified personal trainer now, so I'm moving there. And I have goals. I don't know how you don't have goals, because my mom was a planner and my dad was a planner. So again, it comes back to we have to understand that we have to turn that light bulb on for so many, because truthfully, the light bulb's just turned off. And we're talking about, we got kids, and we talk a little bit about, suicide, because the light bulb's off. They don't have a plan. They cannot really envision themselves doing anything beyond what they're doing right now. But as parents, we have to give them that vision. We have to help them visualize that. As adults, we have to. Whenever I see children, and I know you see the children all the time at Carter Tabernacle, we have a daycare there, and the little kids pass, and they now speak so much. Hey, hey. Because I started speaking to them, and I say, good morning, gentlemen. Good morning, handsome. They're 1 and 2, and some of them said, hey, what is she saying? But I want them to get prepared for what they're going to become, because I know they're not going to always be children.
Right. So preparation is a critical piece of what needs to happen.
Absolutely.
Because I wanted to, as you just touched on suicide, and I was looking at some of the stats, and again, I work with both adults and children, and it was a sad fact that in our area here, that in the last few weeks, we've had 2 African-American kids commit suicide.
Yes.
And for me, that was another wake-up call, because I'd said, again, back in the day, you just didn't hear. Now, it may have been going on, for all I know, but according to the current stats, that teen suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death.
Wow.
Among young people. That was my reaction.
And I think just so much has changed. Think about when we were small. One, we didn't have our own room. Did you have your own room, Charles? Did you have your own room, Dr. Robinson?
No.
I'm just being honest. Think about how things have changed.
I have to laugh, because the concept of having your own room was just not.
Because my bedroom was the living room with my grandmother and 2 cousins.
Right. Okay.
We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. So, 1 bedroom. The other thing is, children were not left alone. We were talking about this. Children did not have a lot of time by themselves. I was always around a grandmother, an uncle, an auntie, 20 cousins, 5 dogs.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Some cats. If you're in Chicago, some rats too.
Right.
Okay?
Exactly.
So I always had company,
and
of some type.
Right.
So you can find kids are spending a lot more time by themselves these days.
Now, the interesting thing, as you were talking about kids not being by themselves, one of the things, again, as Charles alluded to, part of my youth was spent in Harlem. And my parents, they are from the island, so they had the two jobs apiece, etc. And my dad worked 14, 16 hours a day. But the interesting thing was, there was always somebody on the block that had an eye out. And I always wondered, when did these folks sleep? Because it was almost like if you were out there doing anything,
they saw you.
Before your folks got home, they didn't need the internet back in those days.
No internet, no Facebook,
it was
no
like,
selfies. They just told you.
You'd come into the house, and my mother would look at me and said, well, what were you doing down at the other end of the block?
Because they've called.
Exactly.
They used the telephone.
Right.
Miss T had called from across the street.
Or she'd send a little guy over to your house.
Or
you
she
know.
came herself.
There you go. Exactly.
She came herself. Because I remember women walking over to tell, what had happened. I saw boom, 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 and there you go.
Right, exactly.
But again, so we have a great change right now. And then we got a lot of single mothers who are working. Bless them. Again, we're not knocking single mothers at all, because I've been one. Working. I remember working 3 jobs. But I was blessed because I was assistant athletic director, so my children were with me. Because I was in a gym, a gym arena. So when they came from school, they were with the football team or the soccer team, and that's where I was as assistant athletic director. So they were with me.
And the interesting thing is that they all saw you modeling, being able to manage people, manage situations, etc. But then also saw other, males
Tons
older
of men.
than them.
They were always with the football coach, the soccer coach. They were always with some of the men, the baseball coach. At any given time, they were involved with an activity.
Okay.
That was usually coached by males, then just being in an athletic department. Period. Like you're saying, there were just tons of just male testosterone going around all the time. So they got, they were always there. Right. But I sought that out on purpose. Once my first marriage did not work out, I understood I'm not a man. I never told my kids I was a father. I didn't tell kids, I'm your mother and your father. I wasn't. I told them I'm just your mom. Your dad is your dad. He's not here, but your dad's your dad. I'm just your mom, and that's all I can be. And I began to seek out a male role model. So my son, growing up, when we were at school, he would spend time with the president of the university. I would go, and he would be doing chemistry experiments with Brother Mel at St. Mary's College in Moraga, California, for those watching. He would be with the football coach, Mike Rasmussen. He would be with Ernie Kent, who became the coach up in Oregon. I mean, he had great role models. But I understood, and that's all we got to put that light bulb on, that, okay, you may be a single mom, but you don't have to do it by yourself. And there are good men out there. And they're not all African Americans, because he also had Rick Mazzuto, who was an Italian, who would step in. Him and they would step in. They would step in and do things and take them to the soccer and take them places and do things with them. So I understood that it wasn't just black males; he needed males. And he, to this day, he is in business, and he has business partners of all persuasions because he relates to people.
And so you're both realizing what your role was, and also realizing, what the roles, of these other males around. It seems to me that was, we always talk about, it takes a village to raise a child.
Absolutely.
And it looks to me like you created, a village, for those children as they were coming up, that they could see the various role models, they could see what you did, what these males did, etc., and begin to see both the differences, in the roles, the positiveness, of those, men that he's around, and also how you could complement and supplement as a mom that very special role. Because again, I have to say, there's no role quite like that of a mom.
No, and it's a wonderful role, because to be a mom, you can be soft. I'm not talking just about the spoiling. No, you can be soft. You can be a nurturer. My boys will tell you, I never opened the door. From the moment they started walking, they were 2. I began to train them. You open the door for ladies, and they would be 3 and 4 years old. And they'd be struggling to open the door, and I would stand there and wait for them. Because I understood they were becoming men. I understood they would not be just boys forever. And so it's now, though, my 13-year-old, he'll get to a door. I stand there and wait. A woman will walk by me and snatch the door. And I'll say, ma'am, excuse me. He was about to open the door for us. She goes, oh, okay. I'm like, yeah, and he'll, take the door, and he'll, so we now, again, because the line have been erased almost, we don't even know our role. So instead of getting to a door and waiting, and I wait, I do. I get to a door. I don't care. I don't even have to know you. If you're a male walking behind me, if I see a door, I wait. And I've seen men look at me, and I looked at them back. And we had a nice look.
Right.
But they eventually got it.
Got it.
They said,
Yeah.
oh, ma'am, excuse me.
That's it.
I said, thank you so. But then I said, thank you. I didn't just say, you open the door. I said, thank you, sir, so much. Because you know what I've learned, and ladies learn this, men love being men.
Okay. That's a wonderful, wonderful nugget. Exactly.
Men love being men. They love it.
Yeah.
Why not let them be men? Why not let them?
That's one of the things that
And that's not sexist. Why
Exactly.
not let them?
That's one of the things that Charles has always said, on the program. That I'm going to let you
'Cause
say
I
it,
love being a woman.
because it's your point, Charles. Go ahead.
No, well, that's a lot of the things that you're sitting here saying. I wish I could have had you that day. They were great, but coming from you, because still things that just seems natural for us as males, and you sit there with some women sometimes, and they just look like they're just scratching their heads. Because I had to learn this. You have to be careful, because whenever you start talking to moms about their children and being a mother, it's just a lot of times something clicks, and to them,
You're jumping on me.
what?
I'm not good enough?
Right? What? I'm not a good mother, and you
No,
just look
you're
at
not
them,
saying
and you be
that.
like, oh, okay, let me slow my roll, let me back up a little bit. But that's what I was saying earlier when I was talking about what God gave me.
Yes.
And then
The role of protector.
right. And so what God
the
gave
role of
me,
provider.
what I have, what I'm born with. And then now you done crossed the line, and now I'm confused. That's what I meant by it. Because now what God gave me naturally to deal with you for, and I say this all the time. In people, well, a lot of times it sounds confusing, because what you're telling me to back down, and no, it has
Not at
nothing.
all.
It has nothing to do
Not
with
at
that.
all.
Because you try to say, look, I know how to deal with a dude up in my face. I'm good at that. I naturally know how to be a warrior. So when you up in my face like a dude, that's confusing to me, because my response to that is not the way I would respond to a lady or a woman. Because I know how to respond to a dude up in my face. That comes naturally. But what God gave me to deal with you as a woman, that's not what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a dude.
Well, can I say
So
this?
now-
Because this is a whole nother show about relationships between men and women.
Well,
It's a big one.
what I'm saying,
yeah.
Okay, go
now
ahead.
I'm confused
Yes.
just from my natural
Instincts.
So I'm like, what is this in front of me?
And guess what? We're confused too.
Yeah.
We're confused too because we don't know.
Right.
Why am I in this role? What's getting ready to happen? What am I to do next? So we're just as confused, and we don't know.
Right.
And that's why you see that instead of, excuse me, let's sit down and let's understand. Let's have a talk. Instead of the in the face. And so now we are in our sons' faces like that. So they're confused as well. So now, again, we're not preparing them to be good husbands because they've been used to someone always looking at being, yelling and up in them, up in their face. And so now when they deal with their wives, or they even make sure they find a woman that's like their mother. So now, their kids now, again, the cycle continues. And that, again, becomes, it just all comes back to consciousness and awareness.
It's funny because I've actually, through my friends, now that they're older, I've actually had a few of them tell me that they better understand, because I've had quite a few of them tell me that, Charles, when I ran into a man, I didn't know what to do with him. I didn't even know how to act around him, because at first I thought he was just overbearing, and first I thought he was arrogant, because I was like, how you gonna, and how you gonna, but they said, now I better understand how to deal with when I meet a man. Because before, what I thought was a man wasn't a man.
Because that, see, because you know, we've had another thing, you know, not trying to jump around, but again, men are natural protectors.
Right, exactly.
And so we have crossed the line so much so, you know, recently we just had a alleged rape, you know, high school boys. How would 5 or 6 high school boys decide to circle a girl? Not protect her, but hurt her. So we've crossed the line so much, we have to get back. And I'm not saying to the good old days, because I think there's some, we're not talking about the good old days.
Yeah, because as someone said that the good old days weren't as good as we remember them.
Yeah. But we really do, again, and this goes to the consciousness and the awareness about who we are, what we are, where we are, and where we're trying to go. As not just as myself, but as a community, as a family. Because unless we get this right, we're going to continue to see that number rise of teenage suicide and even adult suicide. Okay? And at some level, we have to stop saying you're attacking what I'm doing and listen and say, how can I be? Can my son, can my daughter, can their future be different than mine? And I'm not saying, you know, we got people who are doctors and they're doing well, but they're doing well financially and professionally, but they're not doing well in terms of their interpersonal relationship and their ability to deal with people.
But that's one of our major problems in our culture, in our society. Because if you're making money, then everyth's okay.
And you're a professional.
Right.
Everything's
so as jacked up as you are, and I'm going over a little, I'm changing the subject a little bit.
Well, actually, I think you're right on point.
I think
keep going.
No.
Yeah.
What I mean by this, I'm changing the subject a little bit. The gentleman from Penn State who molested the boys. What was his name?
Sandusky.
Right.
He's a perfect example of what I mean.
Yes.
Because
he has standing in the community.
Right.
Good reputation.
Right. And because he was successful in his field.
From what we thought.
Right. So therefore, now, to me, no matter how society look at him, to me, he was sick. To me, he's sick. And the reason why they don't want to acknowledge him that way, because he was successful. So therefore, he's able to go out and obtain. Look who his prey was.
Right. Mothers, single boys of single moms. Because they were looking for, someone, a godsend, and he had the big house. He had looked like the trappings. So why won't I let my son go spend the night and with him?
Right. But my whole point of it was, he was so dysfunctional and sick, but you would never look at him because of where he lived and the kind of car he drove in his bank account.
Yeah.
And you are on a point, because actually, if we can get back to not just trying to make money, but taking care of our families. Husbands taking care of their wives. Wives taking care of their husbands. They together taking care of the children. The children having a chance to be children. With chores. With the things they're supposed to do. Guess how much wealth we actually could attain.
Right. And it's funny that you say that.
You know, and in terms of wealth.
And I mean actual wealth, because when an environment is what it should be,
Right.
when an environment is what it should be, people can then, they have those ability to make the plans and the goals, and they have the oomph to go after what they're trying to do.
That is so important. If you know, I'd like you to talk a little bit, more about that, because often, because we are so superficially money oriented in this society, we see money as being something that is created by the individual, that almost in a John Wayne like type of pursuit, that we're gonna, as individuals, go out, conquer this money market, etc., and be able to create a lot of wealth. But what you're saying, and I just want to make sure that I'm hearing it correctly, is that if we're able to get our relationships with each other correctly, that not only will we be able to see individual goals, but we will be able to mesh those goals with each other's. And so that as families or groups of people are working cooperatively, that we can create, you know, if you want to call it an environment of wealth, a village of wealth. You know, am I in the direction that you're going
we
in?
have the example, the Egyptian society.
Okay.
They are when we look at what they created in Africa 3,000, 10,000 years ago, it was because they learned to collaboratively work together to build something like a pyramid, which we still can't figure out today. And so if you take that, what we call the nuclear family, but you take that family and they're working, the husband and the wife, they're working harmoniously together, along with the children. I mean, it would be unbelievable. And all you have to do is look at the families that are wealthy. Families that are wealthy, the Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers, the Walmarts, the Waltons, they work together as a family. And we have to get there. If we understood that, and that's why when I see women, you know, working as hard and men just working as hard as by themselves, I always say, boy, if we could work together, because see, you may have some light, Dr. Robinson, Charles, you may have some light, and I may have some light, but if we put our light together, how much more brighter?
And they say we
My
shine.
light by myself would got a little light, your light by yourself. But if we put it together, so when we have families begin to work together. When I went to law school, the way I was able to do law school, when I started law school, my son that's now 13 was a year and a half, and I had a 10-year-old and a 15-year-old. We worked together as a unit. And so I was able to graduate law school in 2.5 years. Okay?
Wow. Okay.
With 3 kids.
Okay.
Supporting myself.
Okay.
But we work together as a family. And so if you ask my kids now, they tell you they went to law school too.
Okay. All
Because
right.
they had to study criminal law and everything, you know, because I would say, okay, I need help putting my booklet together. Okay, Mom, what are we doing? But we were one mind for, you know, to do that. But we now have Dad's trying to do this. Mom's trying to do that. The kids are over there. But if we come together, and that will give those kids who are feeling on the fringe like they want to commit suicide, that they're part of something. Because a lot of that is that isolation. Mom has her life. Dad has his life. Here's my life. But if we can connect each other.
Right. And I just want to touch on that sense of isolation, because often what I see in clinical practice are individuals who may be surrounded by, at times, a lot of people around them, but feeling that sense of disconnect. And if there is a sense of purpose, you know, as you pointed out, then that light that you were talking about, you know, and turning
and that
that on.
isolation becomes boom.
Exactly.
The light can actually take away that isolation. You know, my 2 oldest sons, right, recently, because we believe in the family wealth. They just started AliBrothers.com. They both are licensed real estate agents. One just turned 22, one's 28. He's been in business, but they're in business together.
Okay.
And you know, and they're already talking about their 13-year-old brother, who's 13, that when he turns 18. He needs to get his real estate license. Okay. Because he's an Ali. They said Ali Brothers, and they told him, they said, we are making this company for you. We are going to build family wealth. Okay. And it's because I told them always, and that's the awareness piece. Working for someone else, you will never make it only so far. But if you work for yourself, you could create job for you, people in your family. You know, look at the mom and pop organizations where they just, mom and dad, they worked in the store, and then the kids come along and they work too. They always have a job, and they have a legacy. Right. And we are not leaving our kids a legacy. We're not giving them a future or a past. And so what do they have? When our kids come into play, they actually have to start completely over. And there's no reason for that. Because we can begin to create wealth, and that's a whole nother subject. But again, I do believe if we work together in our families, all the things we're trying to achieve, they'll happen. for the kids as well as the adults.
You know, as you were talking about wealth, and a friend of mine, we were talking just as we are now, and he said, you know, often when we talk about wealth, we talk about economic wealth. But he said, you know, there's another kind of wealth, and he called it relational wealth. And that is the sense that, as you were talking about your parents, how they worked, you know, and they worked together, they passed on some values, you know, some a sense of purpose, you know, with you. You've now passed it on to your children. And so not only is it that they can say, well, mom achieved this, that, or the other, but they can point to those early generations. You know, often we like to say that we stand on the shoulders of giants, but we often don't appreciate what those shoulders actually, you know, gave us. Yeah. And so we'll say, well, you know, dad was a whatever, but not realize that that value, that wealth of having had a purpose, having achieved some things, is something that is able to be passed down. Exactly. In an example.
It's valuable beyond any measure that we could even think of.
Exactly.
To understand a sense of purpose, to understand you have a sense of value, to understand really that you matter. Because I think in many instances we're not passing on to our children that who they are, what they think matters. This morning I was talking with my 13-year-old. I was preparing him breakfast, and he said in his class that the teacher asked, how many of you, talk with your parents? And they asked your opinion. And he said the kids were like, oh, our parents don't respect our opinion. They don't ask us anything. And he said he was just like, well, my mom, because I always ask them, I said, well, what do you think? You know, and I take the time to hear them. I don't say, what do you think, as I'm walking by. I said, well, what do you think about this? And in fact, my logo for my company, J2911 Enterprises, he designed the logo because I was designing the logo. And I said, well, he said, well, Mom, I think it. And I said, whoa. He goes, I said, that's great. And I showed his older brother. And he said, well, where did you get that? I said, well, Amari. He goes, that's really good. But we have to take the time. And that's also shared in my goals. So my company is not my company. It's our company.
Okay, right.
Because so what I'm trying to accomplish will benefit him.
Right. So they feel a part of.
He's a part of. Yeah. And then they said the teacher went on to ask, how many of you, and Charles, you'll like this one, how many of you think you have a sibling that you know is trying to kill you? He said kids just raised their hands. He said, you know your siblings trying to kill you. He said the kids were like, yeah, my brother's always hurting me, or my sisters. And he was just like, boy, I'm from a really loving family. My brothers love me. You know, and he was telling me this morning, and I think he was looking misty-eyed at me. He was just like, you know, I think he just wanted to give me a hug. You know, and I was just like, yeah, he goes, yeah, my brothers love me, Mom. But again, you know, teaching kindness. Because if we have children that are not kind to other children, why would they not be kind? Because it has not been modeled. It has not been made an example for them to see kindness. You know, and I don't think parents realize, and I always say this I say this often on my radio program, our children are watching everything that we do. That's why you have boys that walk just like their dad. You have girls that stand just like their mothers, because they've been watching them since they've been in the world. And I love when people look at babies, and the babies are just standing there, and they're sitting there, and they're just looking, and I don't think people really understand that baby is soaking in everything you're saying, doing, thinking, feeling. That's what is forming that baby's character and their foundation. And so we need to be careful of how we behave, because we often, and you know this, people say, well, they're babies, they don't really know what being said. They don't know what's being said. They don't really know. But they don't know exactly what's being said, but they can begin to figure out, you know, are they angry? Are they happy? Do they feel joy?
And one of the things that the psychologists and neuropsychologists found out, that in the first 4 years of life, we absorb about 90%, of the way that we
gonna
think
be.
about things.
Wow.
90%.
90%.
So, as you were saying with that baby, and I just love watching their little eyes are just going and their heads are going, and you can almost see almost like
learning.
exactly, it's almost like a computer input, that they are just looking around, and and I always wondered if there would be an ability to translate what they're actually absorbing, because you can see the little mind just going. And the thing about it, getting back to a point that you made, and that is, at that young age, they absorb how their mother, how their father see them, how they see the world.
Yes.
And so if the world is seen as this hostile environment, then of course you're going to get somebody who is going to see that, well, listen, I need to, you back off everyone, and often misses that sense of real connection. So what, I've, heard you say real clearly is that not only do we need to be conscious, that we need to listen, that we need to model, and then we need to live the kind of things that we want our children to live.
Absolutely. If you're a parent and you've always wanted to, be an attorney or be a doctor or have a business, do that. Not to the sacrifice of your children. Involve them, but that will help them. And I often talk about this. That will help them to have goals and have plans, because they will watch their parents. Go after those things you really want with everything in your being, but bring your children along for the ride.
There you go.
Bring them on in there. Open the doors so that they can see, and teach them. So that right now my son, and I've talked with you, Charles, about this. We're doing our karate together. And that's part of my goal. And we share that goal together. So share those things with them.
Exactly.
So that the children can be happier.
One of the things, in having you on the program, I was just so fascinated listening to you. We have run over time, and we usually are pretty good in terms of keeping time. But this just tells me, and an audience, I'm sure that you were listening as rapidly as I was, just the amount of knowledge, information, and education that we've received tonight. And we have got to have you back, because I really look at this as part one of several parts.
It'll be my pleasure.
Okay.
It'll be my pleasure. But hopefully those people will begin to think about, be more conscious and think.
Exactly. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
And with who you are, and also and whose you are, is real clear. As you've talked about both your life, your thoughts, your ideas. And I also heard a whole lot more of aspirations that you've talked about as you talked about your company. We're going to have to talk about that another time when you come on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. And family, with that, we're going to have to close up tonight. I have truly enjoyed this version of the Journey 2020. And come back next week. Join us and get some more information, education, and perhaps a few other laughs. Good night, and like we like to say at the Journey 2020, the journey is from you to me, from me to you, so that we can reach a higher level. Good night.